Good morning. In this session, we will discuss why do we study economics. In the previous one, we had a look at from where economics is derived and how it kind of lends charm to itself by being called as the queen of social sciences. As we get to have a look at it, that the word or the term economics gets derived from the Greek word where it speaks about household management, and we try to understand that why a household needs to go for the management of resources since the wants are unlimited and the resources, whether it is physical or financial resources, they are limited in nature with the family or with the economy. So no matter whatever the unit we end up taking, whether it is a family or a household or the let's call a society or the economy or the other countries altogether or the world, you get to have a look at that this problem of unlimited nature of the wants and the resources being limited in nature is faced by everyone. The other feature of resources is that besides being limited, they can also be put to alternative uses. So it's like whatever little bit of money that we get with ourselves or earn with ourselves by ourselves, that can be put to satisfy different needs of ours. So if I speak of a child getting a pocket money, the child has to think about how to utilize that pocket money, either to go for a movie or to buy a book or to spend the money elsewhere. So the resource, which is limited in nature, also has a feature of being put to different uses. Obviously, it gives rise to the problem of that we need to economize on resources. Since whether it is financial or physical, all the resources you find are limited in nature. So therefore, we have to make a choice. If everything was in abundance or in plenty with us, then of course we would not have faced this problem of making a choice. But then the surplus in the economy can also pose a problem, which we will be discussing in time to come. For the moment, we study economics for the reason that we have to economize on our limited resources. And therefore, we make choices in utilizing those resources. When it comes to the application of this economics to economy, where the decision has to be taken at a macro level and where not one individual is involved, but then there are different people, group of people, a different set of individuals who are involved in it, everyone having a different requirement to be fulfilled. This gives rise to the necessity of developing principles. Principles refers to that you need to have some fundamental before yourself of how you're going to decide for the entire economy of how the resources have to be utilized. It is not only enough to develop principle, but also to see to it that you put those principles or fundamentals that you have laid down in the form of an action. So we need to have a plan of action with ourselves to execute the requirement fulfillment of the society. And that's where making public policy arises. So, no matter any of the economy that you may speak of, whether it is a developed country or a developing nation, whether it is capitalist economy or a socialistic economy or a mixed economy, wherever you may pick up any of the economies, there are central problems which are faced by all of them. And central means that they are going to remain basic to all of them. It is that none of the economy can shy away from stating that it doesn't face any of these problems. And what are those problems that all the economies end up facing? The first is the problem of allocation of resources. So since the resources are limited in nature, that can be put to alternative uses. Therefore, the economy has to decide upon how it should be allocating the limited resources that it has. This further will be getting highlighted with the use of production possibility curve and to understand how the trade-off takes place in deciding upon how the resources have to be allocated in the production of goods. It's not only the allocation of the resources or this job that has to be done by the economy, but also to see to it that there is fuller utilization of resources. So it's not enough that you just simply allocate the money that you have, but you also have to see that you are fully utilizing your money. Or it's like students preparing a timetable for their home study. It's not enough just to allocate your hours to different subjects, but also see to it that you actually end up utilizing those hours which you have mentioned in your timetable or in your schedule. If you end up studying less than the hours that you have put in your schedule, that will be termed as underutilization. And if you end up kind of giving more hours than what is not scheduled in your timetable, then that will be called as overutilization of your energies. So it's not enough to see to it just that allocation has been done, but also to kind of keep an eye on whether that allocation is getting fully utilized or not, as undercapacity or underutilization is a problem that can pose a threat to the economy. Next is the growth of resources. So no one would like to stagnate or remain where they are. Economies would love to grow, and growth of resources is simply stating the fact that you end up utilizing your resources in such an effective way that you not only generate to meet the requirements of the present generation, but you end up generating resources for the future generation as well. So growth of resources is something that we eye on, and this is what you get to see when it gets defined in terms of how much national income a country has been able to get for itself. And the growth gets measured in different forms of it like GNP, GDP, etc., which indicates about our growth of the resources. Taking up one problem, I first of all talk about the problem of allocation. So we'll take each one of them. One by one, we'll talk about it. So if I just talk about the problem of allocation of resources, the problem of allocation of resources refers to what to produce and in what quantity. Fine. So what to produce? First of all, we have to decide upon that what the economy requires. The economy requires both the consumer as well as the capital goods. So if I take butter as the example of a consumer good and guns as the example of a capital good, then we have to decide upon whether we would like to have which one of them in a larger quantity. If I wish to have guns in larger quantity, then I'll have to certainly give up on the production of butter. So if you want more of guns to be produced, if the economy wants more of guns to be there, then it will have to cut down on the resources getting allocated for the production of butter. So if one is getting produced more, it is going to be at the cost of reduction of the resources from the other. So that is what is termed as allocation of resources taking place, just because the resources are not much with us and we have to cut down on the production of one in order to have larger quantity of the another. How it has to be produced, whether we are going to make use of capital intensive technique or labor intensive technique. That is whether we are going to use more of machines to produce it or we are going to use the labor that we have with ourselves. And third is for whom to produce. So the word from whom to produce refers to, it is understandable that for whom it would be referring to that it is certainly going to get produced for the people who are living in a society. But that's not what it talks about. It states that for whom would be that how we are going to reward the factors of production who have helped us to produce this butter and gun. So for whom would be referring to how do you end up rewarding those people who have worked to produce these items for us. For the moment, if I kind of depict this problem of allocation of resources, if I have to diagram it in a diagrammatic form, if I have to speak about it, so a diagrammatic representation of it can be done by the use of production possibility frontier curve. So here is this curve which is the production possibility curve, which is telling us that here is the limited resources that you have with your cell. And this limited resources has to be put to the production of butter as well as gun. And therefore you have to decide which one you would like to have in a larger quantity. So since the production possibility frontier, it is indicating the limit, it is telling us the limit or the extent to which we have our resources and how this limited resources is to be put to different uses. That is what we are getting to see here in a diagram form. If we are utilizing any of the points on these curves, that will indicate that resources are getting fully utilized, right? So we spoke about the other problem, that is fuller utilization of resources. So fuller utilization of resources, you can have a look, the point B, D and G. It indicates that the resources are getting utilized to the full. But the one which is lying inside, that is the A point, it shows that there is underutilization of resources. That is, the society or the economy has a capacity to grow to the fullest, but it is not utilizing itself to the fullest. It's like a student preparing a time schedule of putting in 8 hours of study, but ends up studying only for 2 hours. So the capacity is to study till 8, but then is underutilizing the time or the energy by studying less number of hours. As if I speak about the student life, you don't end up sticking or studying only in one class. You end up getting promoted and moving further ahead in your academics. So as you go on moving in your academics, similarly, the economy cannot continue to be satisfied to remain on this production possibility curve forever. It will try to see to it that it starts moving to the new one. So a new production possibility curve will mean that it will aim at growing its resources. Same way, a student will always think about growing their knowledge. And to grow their knowledge, they'll have to pick up extra degrees. Or they will explore more, if not degree, or pick up some skill set so that they can grow further ahead. And that is what is termed as moving away from the original one and forming a new production possibility curve for yourself. So that would be termed as growth of resources. Now, if I, let me just remove it. If A is the point, as I happen to speak of, that speaks of the underutilization, that is, you have the capacity, but you are not utilizing it to produce to the maximum, or you're not trying to reach to the curve, that would be a wastage of resources. There can be times when we are overly optimistic and we would try to achieve something which is beyond our resources, right? So it's like my energy or the capacity to study is till 8 hours, but then somehow I end up putting in 12 hours. I think of or aim at putting in 12 hours. This can be again dangerous if there is a wastage of resources with the underutilization. There is similarly a problem with the overutilization, thinking of aiming for something which you cannot do. So that will also be cause of concern since it is going to lead to weariness. And weariness, if I take it in terms of economy, if the economy just think of putting its resources only to the production of guns, that will also not be doing good to the economy. Or it decides only to produce butter and no capital good for itself, or any guns to protect itself from the others, that too would also not be doing good to the economy. So both the points, underutilization and overutilization, where you are aiming for something which you cannot, that is something which is unachievable. So what is achievable, which is lying on your production possibility curve? That doesn't mean what is unachievable cannot be achieved. Yes, in time to come, it can be achieved if we grow our resources. So gradually, if let's say you start moving from 8 hours to let's say half an hour more, and then go on increasing the number of hours of study, you can definitely reach the over optimistic point that you have set for yourself. Same way, the economy can also progress further ahead, and that's what you get to see, where the economies have come a long way from not only making use of the coal for the production of electricity, but then it has moved from coal to the use of oil and now to the biofuel that you speak of, hydroelectricity that you talk about, even the generation of energy by using the water as a fuel for running the vehicles. So that progress talks about the growth of economy.